I'm Asif Farouk of Finextra, and I'm joined by DCI Dave Carter from the dedicated cheque and plastic crime unit. Thank you for joining us. What explains the rise in Vishing-related losses? Is it simply becoming more prevalent, or are scams getting more sophisticated?
I mean, what's basically happening is that we're finding that phishing is becoming an emerging threat, mainly because the bank systems are such that other tactics they're using are making life a lot more difficult for them, such as bringing in chip and pin, for example. Now, with phishing, the criminals are learning to exploit what they regard as a very vulnerable part of the whole process, i.e. they're attacking the consumer. They're attacking the member of the public who has all of the information in their head that they need in order to try and access either their internet banking or access their telephone banking. So if the criminals can convince the members of the public or the consumer to provide them that, and provide that information via guile or lies or however, then that's what they can try and do. So the message is that the members of the public, the consumers, should guard their personal data as you would a precious item, because if it falls out of your hands into criminal hands, there can be severe repercussions.
So we've heard a bit about, in our reports, voice over IP. Can you give us a very brief explanation of that, and more so about actually the 2-minute switch that we hear about as well?
Well, the criminals are using that in order to increasingly try and communicate with their victims, but they're also using the normal telephone, the landline telephone service, and exploiting something in that called the 2-minute switch, which is effectively that if you put your phone down on a landline, it can take 2 minutes for the call to terminate. So if someone was hanging on the other line with criminal intent, they could then pretend to be, the bank. So whilst you think you're in the security of ringing back your bank, what you're actually doing is speaking to the original criminal that called you up in the first place. And they are exploiting this as a criminal enabler in order for them to facilitate their crime, because they can exploit it. Because whilst the member of the public thinks they've called the bank back, what they've actually done is they're speaking to the criminal that is still on the line and hasn't cleared the line at their end.
So you advise consumers to be vigilant, but is there anything that banks can do to help combat phishing?
Well, banks are making life very difficult for the fraudsters by ever evolving their tactics in order to try and prevent the losses. However, as the banks evolve their tactics, so the criminals evolve their own. And what we're now finding is that because of the bank systems are becoming more secure, particularly with the chip and pin being brought in, the criminals therefore now need to evolve their own tactics. Some are going very high tech and some are going very low tech, and simple conning tactics, deceiving people, simple lying is now becoming more and more popular because it relies on what the criminals regard as the vulnerability in the system, which is the consumers themselves.